Okay, first news topic of the week. We are going to be talking about Microsoft leaks, specifically news of what has been described as the Project Kennan Xbox handheld. Essentially, think of this as an OEM handheld design put together by Microsoft that it can license out to the likes of Asus, Lenovo, etc. And it does seem to be that the first product will be with Asus. And the details on this, well, it seems to be we're actually going to get to see what an Xbox shell looks like on a PC. In this case, a handheld PC. And obviously, our man with the most experience of handheld PCs is, of course, Oliver Mackenzie. So I'm really interested in your opinions on this and what form this will actually take. And bearing in mind that Microsoft are intent on producing their own handheld, what's the point of this endeavor?
Yeah, I definitely have some questions about that latter part. But the basic contours of this seem to basically be like that mooted Windows Xbox hybrid kind of interface device, running Windows, looking like Xbox, behaving like Xbox, that kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense from my perspective. It sounds kind of a lot like Steam Big Picture Mode or SteamOS. You basically have an end-to-end interface that would work for most gaming tasks, and then you'd still have the Windows desktop, presumably, for anything that required like more advanced tweaking or downloading or maybe alternative stores, things like this. You'd have that functionality presumably available through Windows still. But for me, right now, the benchmark for this kind of experience is the Steam Big Picture Mode. Right now, my desktop PC, which I use in TV configuration, is booted right into Steam Big Picture Mode, and that covers most use cases, I think, with controller-friendly games. They still have various issues with like launchers crashing or not being cooperative with controllers. Any kind of settings work you need in Windows obviously does not work with just the Steam Big Picture Mode. Anything that involves the Xbox app or Ubisoft app or EGS or Battle.net, that's not so good. I've also had some issues with the controller interface with the store, which sometimes doesn't respond well to controller
Weird.
input there. But most of those issues are fixed in SteamOS. So to me, basically there would be like two levels to this. You know, number one, can Microsoft beat Steam Big Picture within Windows? Because that is kind of providing a kind of analogous experience here. And number two, can they beat SteamOS? I think they really need to be able to like get in there with Steam's Big Picture Mode in terms of delivering a smooth end-to-end experience with hopefully not too many compromises, but certainly if they were able to get it closer to that SteamOS level where it really is an integrated interface for all manner of adjustment, that would certainly be much better here. And of course, you need to remember, like, the timelines on here are maybe not so favorable to Microsoft. They're talking about this machine potentially coming out in late 2025 or even 2026. That's a period where you're going to have quite a few SteamOS devices, I presume, on the market. Obviously, the Steam Deck itself, various Bazzite forks, or maybe even a full third-party generic version of SteamOS that you could run on any device. That seems to be in the picture as well. So that seems like a bit of a dangerous combination to come up against. And then, of course, if they don't have good Steam integration for people, I think a lot of this effort might be a bit of a non-starter, because obviously the beauty of SteamOS is that it's built around the largest gaming platform on PCs, period. And this maybe would not be that. Hopefully it would have some good integration with Steam. That would really kind of be a prerequisite, I think, for this to work out well. So ultimately, I have somewhat mixed feelings about coupling Windows with this kind of interface, but I think, you know, Microsoft definitely hopefully has the capability to pull it off here. And there are a decent number of games that won't run on Steam Deck or won't run well on Steam Deck owing to translation issues with Proton. Obviously, you have anti-cheat problems with multiplayer games. This effort would presumably sidestep all those issues. That is a big, big win for Microsoft potentially if the rest of the operating system can be contorted into a form that would work with controllers here. But I mean, ultimately, I think one final question here would be just with respect to this particular effort, because like you mentioned, Rich, this is an Asus exclusive effort, or at least Asus is potentially the first firm involved in such an effort here. And I kind of wonder, like, would it be the same Zen processors we've seen so far? Would it be the Strix Point APU? Would it maybe even be the Zen Z2 Go APU, which is a Rembrandt-based APU? I don't know. That does not sound super exciting to me from a performance perspective. Now, if this was based on a custom chip or something, that would be a lot more exciting and potentially quite tantalizing. But I think probably this initial effort will just be with that kind of off-the-shelf part here. And I think ultimately, like, what I'd like to see from a Windows handheld would be something that's led by Microsoft that maybe has a custom chip that has an additional level of power in it that can kind of push beyond this spec that we've seen for the past 3 years, with every device in the 15-watt range kind of settling in at plus or minus 20% Steam Deck performance. That'd be an area of interest for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a lot to go through.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go to Alex first, though, before I pick that apart.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to echo everything Oliver said. I think this could lead to a good way to unify the access to settings in Windows in a way that is more controller friendly. Microsoft has had historical problems with this you can go into Windows and there's still things stuck in the control panel. There's still things stuck in settings. You type in the search bar, something from the settings and it doesn't show up. You have to go to settings manually. It's just a mess, right? If this could also be a way to get unified Windows UI interactions to actually start working again, I'd be grateful. But to the point at hand, I think actually this Project Kennan is going to be a bit, not from the exact same way it's done on the Sony side, but I think it's almost like Microsoft's PS5 Pro in the aspect of it is testing the waters and going to be used as a beta testing platform for what they're doing with the next Xbox. All the UI stuff, the sideways integration with Steam that has been already mentioned by Phil Spencer in the past, as well as just mentioned by Oliver. All of these, these things that are going to be teething points and points where you need kind of like open beta testing from an audience, like the flighting, as they call it at Microsoft, I think. This is what this product, I think, is actually going to be very useful for them. And it's also going to see exactly how does this fit into the legacy catalog of PC gaming. Unlike the Xbox Handheld, which is probably going to come out later than this, maybe 2027, this one will not have the Xbox integration in terms of like you carry your library with you,
right?
In the way that we expect with an Xbox branded product. This one is presumably just going to have like Xbox Anywhere, I think it is called, like the streaming capability, as well as any other things you might have already had on the Microsoft Store, including your third-party things, purchased through Steam and EGS and such. So it's not going to be the exact same thing as following the PS5 route, but I think that's exactly what this Project Kennan is. It is a testing grounds for the further development of what this next Xbox ecosystem is going to be, which is going to be much more like a PC and much more like the Windows ecosystem we've seen in the past, just hopefully with a lot more intuitive controls and also just extractable performance that is not going to make you tear your hair out. I really think if Microsoft is pushing this thing, they need to do exactly what Steam does, where there's like controller profiles downloading with your games and stuff. They need the equivalent of GameScope to run really well. The Microsoft Game Bar is okay, but once again, it could be better. the ability to like frame rate limit and do all these things that you have with GameScope, integrated FSR, a whole bunch of other features there that are really, really good. I think that's something that Microsoft needs to bring over to the PC space, because currently that's filled by third-party tools in the PC landscape, which are all plugging into Windows API calls. It feels like they could do that on their own and perhaps do it better in a way that doesn't require the mouse and keyboard to work. So there's a lot that I feel like this product could represent. But like Oliver, I'm very curious about the technological underpinnings of it. If it is really performance-wise a lot like just this plus or minus 20% Steam Deck that Oliver just said, it doesn't actually sound too interesting. It has to also maybe have some good hardware oomph there to make it sound more interesting, as well as a sleep button, like a good sleep button. That's something Steam has. The Steam Deck is awesome for that aspect. If you try sleeping games in Windows, good luck. If you've ever tried it, it's not usually a good thing. So that would be another thing that they would have to work on, Windows sleep functionality, which hasn't been touched in a long time.
Okay, so where do we begin with this? Well, from my perspective, let's first of all talk about why they're doing it when they've got their own handheld coming in a couple of years. And I think it's simply because, first of all, they need to solve the problem of Windows being able to be used as a console-style operating system. And part of the interface is obviously a key issue for it, but there's a lot more to it, like, system software updates, that kind of thing. How are you going to install those third-party stores unless you plug in a mouse and keyboard and do it, the manual way? That's my main issue with PC gaming on a handheld at the moment, is that kind of like A USB hub with a mouse and keyboard are kind of like essential for setting everything up.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of good to go. There's a lot going on there. And as you say, Alex, you look at SteamOS and what it's doing in terms of bridging the gap between what a console is and what a PC is. And Gamescope is an excellent example of that because it's doing a lot of great PC-style stuff that I think high-end users would probably want on an Xbox. In theory, it should just be plug and play, right? But when you start verging it into the PC area rather, you've got to have PC style features. I think. I think fundamentally the interface will just look like an Xbox, like an Xbox Series X, fundamentally, with extra bits added on. The concept of unifying your game libraries. An early solution to that is probably just simply some kind of unified launcher. I don't foresee Microsoft allowing you to buy Steam games from within their shell. That would be kind of like counterintuitive, I think. In terms of why they're doing it, I think it is simply that, maybe I always I was going to say this could be a reaction to the Lenovo SteamOS device, right? The thing is, though, the industry doesn't react that quickly. Products don't just magically appear out of thin air, with the possible exception of like the 1070 Ti back in the day.
Where did that come
when
from?
Vega came along, and it was great. And so NVIDIA just sort of like stripped back the 1080 a bit and called it a 1070 Ti. Very easy to do in that sense, but from this, I don't think this sort of strategy, this kind of ability to put together that interface, associating with whoever the partner is, ASUS or whatever. There have been rumblings about Microsoft providing OEM hardware for well over a year at this point. So I think it was always going to happen, but I do think that Steam Deck was a catalyst. And I do think that Microsoft saw it and thought, well, what if they start to encroach into our Windows space? This is problematic. Hardware-wise, let's talk about that. Could go one of two ways. If it is an OEM device that Microsoft is basically licensing out, there is potential for some customization, right? However, to create custom silicon is not actually a cheap endeavor. It requires a lot of money. And if AMD already has off-the-shelf solutions that will do the job, it's probably the best way forward. Which one? Well, tricky, right? You'd really want Strix Point, which would be the latest and greatest. But even then, what for what, it's not a generational leap over Steam Deck. You have to kind of, similar to the Asus ROG Ally and Z1, Z2 Extreme, you're going to need to throw more power at it to get more performance, a lot more performance. I'm not sure that's what Microsoft would want. If it is, was it, Oliver, the Z2 Go?
Z2 Go is Rembrandt.
Rembrandt.
Yeah, which is basically what, a 6800U?
Yeah.
Which is okay. It is faster than Steam Deck. But again, you need to throw more power at it to get that extra performance. 15 watt versus 15 watt is extremely unimpressive. It's really, really interesting that they're doing this. And I think it is because they probably do need a proving ground, as you say, Alex. Mm-hmm. But my expectations are kind of tempered as to what it's going to be. I honestly think that if you're putting out an Xbox that doesn't run Xbox games, for example, the 360 back compat stuff, I think that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because you want your digital library to run on your Xbox, really. Let's take some supporter questions on this. This one from Anxiously Chrono Triggered. Hi, DF crew. We've all now heard of Xbox Kennan the Barbarian. I think 2025 would be too soon to release it from Microsoft, as there wouldn't be any hardware advantage over other handhelds. I mean, it would be great to see FSR4 working on the device. What do you think, gentlemen? Cheers! ! You'd love to see FSR4. Either you'd need a back-ported version of FSR4 that runs on RDNA 3, or you would need a new APU that runs RDNA 4. Yeah. And even then, there are problems, I think, in terms of its computational cost. This one from Rave_Damos. in all in block capitals.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Digital Foundry Fellows, I have 2 questions, if that's allowed. I'll allow it.
Yeah, might as well.
According to Jez Corden, Microsoft is reportedly working on Windows updates that add an Xbox software shell for PC gaming, likely compatible with various hardware. Conceivably, this shell would work on existing devices like the ROG Ally 2. Thoughts? I'd say yes.
Mm-hmm.
If they're putting out an OEM Xbox, unless there's some sort of hardware differentiation, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't run on pretty much any APU based handheld system. And I think that's fine. And I think Microsoft would actually welcome that. The more people that are running an Xbox-like experience from their perspective, the better. It's all ties into this. This is an Xbox beat that they're putting out there. Perchance, Rich. I love the way that people sort of adopt like
Victorian
for like language
yeah.
whenever they address me in questions. Perchance, Rich, does Digital Foundry plan coverage of the Asus Xbox branded PC handheld rumored to arrive later this year? Given the hardware is likely the same or marginally derivative of ROG Ally hardware, would the focus be on the software user experience rather than just performance? Absolutely, right? Because, this is the big problem Microsoft's got. It hasn't got a handheld experience that works, really. Windows is really not good. What's this question here? I've got one more here from Diehard X86. Sounds like a really great YouTube channel.
It is.
Anyway, speaking on the OEM collab Xbox branded handheld, I'm a bit confused why Microsoft would release another handheld SKU instead of just updating the current ROG Ally / Legion Go. I mean, I don't see why they can't do that. Why do you think they are doing this? Windows Central Jez Corden mentioned it being a test bench for their future hardware efforts, but couldn't they get the same data from currently available handhelds? Thanks. I think it's all about this OEM program and whether it's going to work. And if it is actually Microsoft hardware that's being licensed, that's probably going to be one thing they're going to do in future with their quote unquote actual handheld. And similarly, it doesn't really matter if you're running this OS on other handhelds. The more the merrier, right? Any final thoughts, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is probably some merit to having a dedicated device with like a proper Xbox button. That's nice to have. Maybe a more pronounced grip, something like that. Inching more in the direction of something that's distinctively Xbox there. That could be part of it. Also, it's just maybe easier to launch in one device with one chipset to start with. Maybe they've got some special sauce in terms of that chipset, in terms of, something new. I guess that could be some potential there. Yeah, maybe something. I don't know. Unlikely, but perhaps they have something interesting from the hardware perspective that would justify moving over. But I'd also presume that this would be available for PCs to use generally and handhelds to use in particular as well, other handhelds.
Yeah, I agree on that. And yeah, they have Auto SR, of course, which I think would be an absolutely fine addition to have to a handheld based on it showing on the Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite Surface. Some sort of all-in-one style upscaler for any game. There's certain value to that. I wonder if it could be backported to existing AMD hardware that does have an MPU in it. That's certainly an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for you on this one, Alex?
Oh, I was just imagining like a handheld with like a pistol grip on it when Oliver was talking about it. It would fit really well into the gamer aesthetic. Pistol grip, sight rails, hollow sight on it. You can imagine what it would look like.